everybody, welcome to your Tuesday class number 1, first Tuesday class of this video do-it-yourself lesson adventure that we're on together here. So if you are following our classes the same dates, the same times as we usually do them, then today for you would be June 6th. June 6th. So your first Tuesday lesson. So just same as I explained in the Monday class, you guys have received, or you should have received, a whole Tuesday class package. So it has your notes and instructions form like this, and then all of the different readings and assignments, questions, and notes that you will need for all 3 Tuesday classes. So that should be all together in an email. The notes and instructions worksheet here, not really a worksheet, it's notes and instructions. So your notes and instructions, they have a lot of what I'm going to say, but it's just so that you know what's important to write down, and you have the instructions on paper as well, so you don't have to keep going back to the video and watching them over and over again. But don't be worried, I will go over the instructions with examples, explain everything as best I can. I will anticipate your questions before you ask them, best I can, and explain everything on the video. I will be stopping and starting the video and telling you when you can go and work on stuff, and then when we're going to go over it together, so hopefully everything is pretty clear for you on here. Remember as well that throughout any of these video lessons, any of this homework you're working on, you can write down any questions that you have and take it to either Irma's class or ask Debbie about it, right? They're going to be helping you with those questions. And any assignments you finished, please email them to me when you're done so that I'll be able to look at them and review them and hopefully give you a little feedback at some point soon, either in my week that I have back here at the end of June or during the summer or even in September. We will make it work for you. So, our Tuesday lessons. On our Tuesday lessons throughout the entire year, we have been putting a lot of focus on document use, right? We've done all kinds of different documents, including forms, logs, shift reports, conflict reports. Those are Mondays. But we've been doing lots of logs in our Tuesday classes too. We've been doing maps, and we've done blueprints, pricelets, budgets, catalogues. We've done almost everything. So for those of you who just recently joined class, if you think you're sick of document use now, imagine if you were here since September. You'll be really document used out. So, of course, we're not quite done with document use yet. I'm going to get you to do a little bit more on these Tuesday classes. We're going to be looking at a timeline, doing a little bit of reading, looking at a calendar, a schedule, and using the internet to do a little bit of extra research, which are all document use assignments or reading assignments. And our topic that we're going to be looking at is an interesting one. It's Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. So in Canada, June, not only is it Pride Month, yay Pride Month, it's also Indigenous Peoples History Month. And June 21st is Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada. So we are going to be learning a little bit about that, learning about, today we're going to learn about different days of celebration that we have in Canada, or even, in your countries. I guess we can't exactly talk about it together because I'm not actually here, but feel free to put in the comments, right? I'm not entirely sure, but I think that you guys, this class, whoever I sent the link to this video, you are the only ones who can really see this video. I might be wrong. I'm a YouTube noob, so I don't know, but it's kind of a neat idea to write in the comments. So if you have something to share about special days in your home country that you want to write about in the comments, and you could share with each other that way. That's kind of fun. So that's a way for you guys to communicate. So yes, today we're going to talk about those days of celebration. We're going to talk a little bit about the background of National Indigenous Peoples Day, where it came from, what it's all about. And we're going to look at the timeline, the history of it, a little bit about that. There's some dirt on my screen. There. Now my face is all clean. We're good to go. Okay, so first of all, I want you to open up this document. So the document is titled National Aboriginal Day Background. I might have also titled it National Indigenous Peoples Day Background. The reason we have two possible names is because this day used to be known as Aboriginal Day, but the more correct term, the more preferred term, is Indigenous Peoples Day. And the Canadian government actually changed the name from Aboriginal Day to Indigenous Peoples Day in 2018. So, I don't know, some people might still call it Aboriginal Day, which is not encouraged. I think Indigenous Peoples Day is better. I do not have a date if this is from before or what. Yeah. So, anyway, I want you to open this up, and despite the incorrect name of the day, we're going to look at that. So just make sure it's ready, but before we get into it, the first thing I want to do is talk about, our days of celebration. So if we were here in person, I would ask you, what are some special days that you celebrate different people or different groups or cultures? And I'm not talking about, I guess Christmas would count, right? Your Christmas, we're celebrating our faith, or just family and the spirit of giving. We have days like Mother's Day, right? We celebrate mothers and all that they do for us. And Father's Day, same thing. We celebrate fathers and their love, all they do for us. When I was little, I always said to my mom, "Why isn't there a Daughter's Day?" And she said to me, "Every day is Daughter's Day, Amanda." Clearly I was a little spoiled. So days like this we celebrate. We also have days like Remembrance Day or Vimy Ridge Day in Canada, right? Remembrance Day is on November 11th, and that is all about, I wouldn't call it a celebration, right? But it's a day to appreciate and remember all of the contributions that our troops, gave, our armies gave in order to secure our freedom, So it's not necessarily a celebration, it's kind of a sad, somber day, but it's still appreciative. It's all about appreciation. Vimy Ridge Day, I think it's April 9th. We don't have a national holiday, but it is a special day, and that is to celebrate more about, Canadian armies in World War I. World War II. I should know this. So Vimy Ridge was a very important day for the Canadian Army and for World War the war, because that's a place that Canada had a really big victory, and a lot of people sacrificed their lives in order to turn the tides of the war, to help everyone who was suffering get their freedom. So those are days we celebrate and appreciate, right? Just like how June is Pride Month, or how February is Black History Month, right? We celebrate these groups of people or these individuals who have so much to contribute, right? They have so much to give. So that is what we're doing here with National Indigenous Peoples Day. So the whole entire month is is a celebration, but the specific day that goes to this celebration is June 21st. So let's read a little bit more about it. So now I want you to take a look at this. So right away I'm going to read it. I'm going to read it out loud to you because it's a little bit long. There's a lot to it, and I just, I want to, well, it's not that long. It's just 2 pages, 3 pages, but I want to just talk about some of the stuff maybe, so make it a little bit easier on you. So we will read it together, but if you prefer to read it by yourself and go through it and highlight and circle and, make notes about new vocabulary, then feel free to do that instead, and you can skip ahead in the video to when we finish reading it. So if you want to read by yourself, that is step 2. So now you can go do step 2. If you want to read along together as a group, then stick around, don't pause the video, and we will read. So I've got it in front of me. National Aboriginal Day, June 21st, this year 2023, of course. So, National Aboriginal Day, also known as National Indigenous Peoples Day, right, is celebrated on June 21st every year. This day is a Canadian federal holiday to recognize the efforts and contributions of the Aboriginal peoples of Canada. The Aboriginal people include the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis of Canada. While the holiday is officially named National Aboriginal Day, not anymore, it's a little outdated, most people refer to it as National Indigenous Peoples Day, a term more accurate because it includes all the Indigenous people of Canada. National Aboriginal Day celebrates the heritage and cultures of all Indigenous people in the country. It is a focus on diversity and a day worth celebrating. So just like we talked about, these days of celebration, right? It's celebrating differences, right? Just like Folklorama. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of or gone to Folklorama before, but we have this amazing event that is held in Winnipeg every year in the summer. It's probably coming up, and it's where different venues all over the city hold special celebrations where there's for different cultures, where there's different foods from the culture, different performances, different speakers, art, and just lots of people, and it's really interesting. You get to learn a lot about the different cultures, and it's just a celebration of our diversity, which I love. So it's kind of like that, it's just a celebration. And it's now, right now, in time since 2 years ago now, Canadians started finding those awful, graves, right, with the Indigenous children from the residential schools. That was a big deal. That was awful. That was shocking. That was horrible. So now, because of that discovery, National Indigenous Peoples Day is a little bit more somber. We have that little, that touch of remembrance in there. But this is why we have the Truth and Reconciliation Day in September, to kind of have a separate day to mourn, those kids, and to mourn, what was done to the Indigenous peoples in Canada. But this is more of a celebration, this day. So let's go to the next section, History of National Aboriginal Day. It bugs me that it keeps saying Aboriginal Day. I feel like it's the wrong name. I don't like it. National Indigenous Peoples Day, I'm just going to change it, is to honor the contributions and efforts of the Indigenous peoples to the country, including the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, right? The day, June 21st, was chosen as it is a traditional celebration among Indigenous peoples. Most Indigenous people celebrate their heritage during the summer solstice, And the Governor General of Canada at the time decided that the best way to honor the Indigenous people was, to begin with, their traditional holidays and celebrations. Makes sense, right? I don't know why it wasn't included from the beginning. Excuse me. The day resulted from numerous calls for a day that honored and celebrated the Indigenous peoples of Canada, who were set aside and subjected to racist policies and discrimination. Very true. The day celebration began as a self-declared celebration and later evolved into a day where all the First Nations came together in solidarity, right? Everyone coming together to show their pride in their culture. I think it's so important, It's so important. It's part of identity. And it's such an important part of Canada. For a long time, the day was for all the different First Nations of Canada to express their solidarity, their togetherness, and embrace their heritage and cultures. Later, the Indigenous peoples' representatives called for an official celebration to recognize the contributions of the Indigenous peoples to the country. So contributions of these people to the country, talking about what do they give, how are they an important part of the country, right? And we celebrate and we recognize it. And that's an attempt to kind of counter some really racist legislation that the Canadian government had going for the Indigenous people. Where were we? There. The day was eventually designated as National Aboriginal Day and absorbed as part of the Celebrate Canada festivities of the Canadian government. Yay! This series of public holidays celebrate the variety of cultures of Canada and is used to foster Canadian pride. Cool. Next section, National Indigenous Peoples Day, FAQs. So if you don't know, FAQs stands for Frequently Asked Questions. Is Indigenous Day a statutory holiday in Canada? So statutory holiday means that it's a federal holiday and stores are closed and you get places off work. So Indigenous Day is a statutory holiday in federal workspaces, but in other spaces it depends on the provincial laws. So it's kind of like Easter Monday, where if you are a government employee, you get that Monday off, you get that day off, but I don't get that day off, schools don't get that day off, So it depends on your provincial legislation. So if you work for the government, you get a day off to celebrate. If you don't, then find a way to celebrate at home or at work or whatever. Next frequently asked question on the next page. What happened to Indigenous people in Canada? Right? What's the history there? Why is this a thing? Well, children were stolen from Indigenous people and sent to residential schools to forcibly integrate them into white society. So to put that simply, children were stolen. Pretty straightforward, right? They were stolen from their families, brought to these schools, and the schools taught them, a little bit how to read and write, but a lot of the experience was just teaching them how to be white, how to be like the English. So it was pretty terrible. They did not allow them to speak their languages or to wear their traditional clothes or to eat their traditional food or even to speak their language. It is brutal. I think I said speak their language twice, but it's really important, so makes sense I say it twice. Yeah, it was absolutely horrible, and they did a lot of, some of the teachers were absolutely nasty, they beat the kids, they mistreated them, there was a lot of abuse, and as we have recently learned, there were also murders. So it's a pretty scary big deal. It's not just cultural genocide anymore, it's actual genocide because the amount of deaths was huge. So it's more important now than ever to understand, the history and the lasting effects of these schools and how they the effect they've had on every generation going forward after that. So that's part of this day too, this celebration, is learning all about it. Do First Nations pay tax in Canada? First Nations and other Indigenous people pay the same taxes as other citizens of Canada. You know, part of the horribly racist legislation that the government created to try and control Indigenous peoples of Canada, you know, there are some special rights, but they're not really, they're kind of underhanded, you know, these special rights. They're underhanded. They're not really rights. They're just kind of prejudice and racist and twisting the situation, right? But a lot of racism has stemmed from people believing that Indigenous people get special treatment from the government, and that is absolutely not true. They get special treatment, all right. It's not very good, right? We don't want to be, nobody wants to be treated like that. Nobody deserves it. So that is a frequently asked question, is do they pay tax? Do they have to pay? Do they get special treatment? No, they pay tax just like everybody else has to. Same thing. Just because you have a First Nation status or an Indigenous status, you still have to pay, same as everybody else. So remember that. All right, now next section, how to observe National Aboriginal Day. How to observe it. So when we say how to observe it, we mean how to celebrate it, how to think about it, how to, you know, participate in some way. So there's some ideas here. So one, you can visit a community celebration. Several celebrations are organized to celebrate this day. Find a one near you and join in the fun. Find one near you and join in the fun. Cross that A out of your thing. That's a typo. Find a one. No, find one. Find one. Okay, sorry, got distracted by the typo. Find one celebration near you. And there are some. I'm going to be showing you a little bit more in our next Tuesday classes leading up to the 21st. Next, learn about Indigenous peoples, right? We're talking about it a little bit here. If you've been in our class for a while, maybe a year or two, I know Sylvia surely remembers, and Alessandra as well probably remembers the Fatty Legs story, right? That was a really good story, and we learned a lot about Indigenous experiences through a true story. So that was very interesting, but there's a lot more to look at, right? As the article says, this day is to celebrate the achievements of Indigenous peoples. Educate yourself on their contributions so you can celebrate meaningfully, right? Makes sense. Next one, donate to fundraising events. A lot of non-governmental organizations organize fundraising events on this day. Contribute to the Indigenous people by donating generously to these fundraising events. And of course, it totally depends on the organization, but a lot of them, you know, are the purpose is to help Indigenous people recover from all this awfulness that the government did to them. Help them, support them through these, you know, these tragedies that we're learning about, and help revive the culture. Help people understand more about it and everything. So it's all good. Next section says 5 interesting facts about Canadian Indigenous people. Now keep in mind that this was written a few years ago. So it might not be accurate anymore, but let's look at it. Native Canadians are valued. About 3.8% of the total population of Canada is Indigenous people. That's not a lot. So, you know, and they were the first people to live in Canada, right? It was their home from the very beginning, before anyone else came over the seas. So, you know, it's important, you know, that we recognize the group and celebrate. There are a lot of languages. That is true too. It's always interesting to hear the languages, I find. There are over 50 different Indigenous languages in the country. Wow! because of all the different groups all over Canada. Canada's so big, so of course there's lots of different languages. The largest concentration is in Ontario. About 22% of Indigenous people of Canada live in Ontario. Interesting. Six Nations is the largest reserve. It's the name of a reserve. So that's a place that is kind of self-run, I guess, self-governed by Indigenous communities. I don't know a ton about them, so I don't want to, say anything that isn't true or isn't right. But yeah, I know they're communities where Indigenous people live and they govern themselves. They have their own government and they live the way they want to live there. Maybe not the way they want, but they have their own communities there. So Six Nations is the biggest one. With over 27,000 members, Six Nations is the largest reserve in Canada. Interesting. And of course, if anything I say, or if any of these 5 interesting facts from this website, this is from the nationaltoday.com, this is from, an official National Aboriginal Day article here. Again, I don't like saying the title wrong. I don't like it. If there's anything that's not correct in here and someone else knows more about it, please educate me. I would love to hear more. If anyone has more facts or some interesting, input or something extra to give or a correction to make on something I've said, please share with me. I want to learn more too. So you can do that in the comments, or you can email me if you think you'd rather it be more private, whatever you'd like. And if you have questions, you can definitely email me as well, or ask Debbie or ask Irma, of course. Last fun fact here, Cree is the most spoken language. There are over 96,500 fluent speakers of the Cree language. Next, why National Indigenous Peoples Day is important. This is an important one. We love people celebrating themselves. We love it. We admire people who appreciate themselves and their heritage. It's true. We think it's important to love yourself and where you come from. I absolutely agree. This is totally against what the residential schools were teaching, and I'm glad that it's, things are changing that way. It's so interesting to learn about, different cultures and, different ways of doing things. And we can learn so much about the world and better ways of doing things just by being open to learning about each other and loving each other. Another reason we want to learn more. Kind of just said that. We think that people don't know as much as they should about the Indigenous peoples. True. We want to learn more respectfully. Yes, we do. We don't want to, and that's why I say too on here, please, if I'm saying anything wrong, or if there's anything wrong in this article, or if you have more information, please share it with me, because I want to learn more. If I say anything that's bothers anybody, I want to know about that. I want to learn. So I'm trying to do so in the most respectful way that I can, and if I'm not, then let me know, because it's important to me. Lastly, we love the diversity, of course. I think I just said that too. We think it's so exciting to see the different cultures and languages in the country. We want more people to know about it. Yes, we do. I think it's awesome. So that's the end of that, and I've put the link there of where I got this information from. nationaltoday.com. So you can go there to the link and see more or research more if you want on that website. I couldn't get the actual author's name. I tried, but you can go to the link and find some more. And I think on the digital copy of this article that I sent to you, if you open the document on your computer or your phone, there should be some links on the page, like different colors or underlined, where even though it's a PDF file, you can actually click on the links, and it'll take you to the website, or it'll take you to, another page that'll give you more information about it. So if you're doing it on paper, good for you, but if you're doing it online, that's kind of an extra added bonus for you there. Okay, so that's us reading it together. I hope I've gone over all the words. I hope I've explained enough. I hope I've, done so in a positive way. So we're learning together. We're learning more about it. So your next step then. Okay, we've kind of looked over this and read it and everything, and I'm not going to get you to do an assignment on that. I'm going to get you to do an assignment on something else, because this is reading. This is not a document. And we're document use on Tuesdays. So the next thing I'm going to get you to do is open up your National Indigenous Peoples Day timeline. So that looks like this. And again, this form is a little outdated. It doesn't say National Indigenous Peoples Day. It says National Aboriginal Day timeline. So keep in mind, right, that's not how it's supposed to be. But it's a little outdated, but this is what we're going to use. It's an interesting document, right? We can see here we've got kind of a line going up the center. We've got years going down here. We've got a title with some beautiful art at the top. And we've got different boxes with information on them that are next to these years on the timeline. So that shows us that, these things in here correspond with the years on here. They match with the years on this line. So it's kind of like a calendar, but instead of having every month, it has every year. So, and then it has the different events that happened in each year. So that should give you a good idea of what you're looking at. With this, so you need this in front of you, but you also need in front of you these questions here. So the document is called Timeline Questions. So at the top, it looks like this, and at the top it says, use the National Aboriginal Day timeline to answer the following questions. So it has the five questions there to look at. So this, in order to answer these questions, right, you're going to be looking at the timeline, and you're going to be picking information, details out of this document, out of this timeline. So to do that, you are going to need to skim and scan. So as a reminder, skimming is when we just look over something quickly and get a good general idea of what it's about, right? So we've kind of done the skimming, a little bit of skimming already together to show you how the document is organized, how it works. That's a little bit of pre-reading for us. The strategies where we looked at the pictures, we saw how it's organized, and used that organization to figure out what the purpose of the document was. So we just did that together as a group. Or as an individual. I don't know how many of you are going to watch this video, but whatever. We're having fun anyway. I'm having fun by myself. Whatever. Okay, so scanning, now, to remind you, scanning is where we are looking for a particular piece of information. So we kind of ignore everything else, and we just look for a specific word or phrase. So in these questions, right, for example, number 1, in 1982, important, the National Indian Brotherhood, important, requested a day to be set aside each year to celebrate Aboriginal culture in Canada. In what year, question, was June 21st first celebrated as National Aboriginal Day? So in this question, right, it's asking us, well, what was the first year when National Indigenous Peoples Day existed? So I'm looking at the important info in the question. We've got 1982, right? This is a timeline, so any dates, I know they're important. I'm looking at this title of an organization called National Indian Brotherhood. That was the name of the organization. So I'm looking for that. And I'm looking for the June 21st because it's special. It's the first day. It's the first day it was an official holiday or an official celebration day. So those are the 3 pieces of information that I'm going to be looking for as I go through this timeline, this document. So I'm going to look for the date, 1982. I'm going to look next to it and see if it says the National Indian Brotherhood in there. I'm going to see if it says June 21st somewhere. So I'm going to look at all this, make sure I understand the question, pick out those important words, right? And we don't see June 21st in that first section, so that might mean that first section's not the answer, right? So we need to read each question carefully. Circle the important parts, like dates, like names, right? Names of organizations, important parts about it. So anything that stands out in the question, circle those. Those are the kind of words you're going to look for when you're looking for the answer, okay? Oops, I flipped too far. There we go. And in some of the questions you need to know what words mean as well. So for example, in number 2, which 2 provinces are mentioned in the timeline? So we need to understand the word provinces and we need to understand the word mentioned. So if those words are difficult for you and you don't know what they mean, then you need to translate them or look them up. So I always find when we're doing reading strategies or question answer activities like this where you have to answer questions about something that you're reading, a lot of people, especially when you're learning English, right, the hardest part for them is understanding what the question is asking them to find, what it's asking them to do. So that's really where I want you to put most of your attention, is not on just the answer, it's on the question. Make sure you will understand, what is this question asking me to find? Is it asking me to find a year? Is it asking me to find the names of the provinces? Is it asking me to find a name of a person or a name of an event or a name of an organization? So have in mind, what is this question asking me before you start looking for the answer? That's important, okay? So I hope I've given you enough to kind of help you get started in going through these questions. If you're stuck on anything or you really need help understanding one of the questions, this is one of those times when you need to circle it or write your question down and bring that to Irma's class or to Debbie or to the classroom during our class time so that you can discuss it with other students and find a way to get the answer, to ask someone who can help you understand it. And I'm sure Debbie and Irma will be interested in helping you. Even Nalini, I'm sure. Even though she's math and computer, she's pretty clever, that Nalini. So I'm sure she can help you too if you can't get to Irma's class for literacy. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say about that. Finally, I've already made 3 other videos. I did our Monday class videos already, and none of them were this long. But I didn't read through any articles with you on the other ones, so you're lucky today. Okay, so your next task then is to look at that timeline, have the questions in front of you, and take some time, use the timeline to help you answer the questions. Use that scanning strategy to find the correct information. So once you do that, you can come back to the video and we will wrap things up for the day. So go do step 4. Okay, we are back. So I hope that means that you've finished your assignment or you've done the best you could and have your questions all prepared to ask Debbie or Irma or classmates or me even when I get back, if you can wait that long. But if you can get some help from someone else, that'd be awesome, because, understanding this stuff and learning about this stuff will help us in the next Tuesday lessons, because we're going to continue on learning about National Indigenous People Day and all the events and stuff that can take place, and learning about the culture a little bit, just from research and reading and watching videos too. I'll have videos for you to watch. I'll have to give you some more links. But for now, that's it. So when you're done this assignment, when you're finished these questions, please email me your finished work, because this is a document use assignment. So congratulations, you just finished a stages assignment from your book. So that's it for today's lesson. That's all for Tuesday lesson number 1. We will be back next time for more interesting articles and videos and all that stuff I mentioned, all that good stuff. So I will quit yabbing. This video is long enough, and I will see you next time. Bye!